In the silence of my private jet, I stared at the incoming RSum on my desk. Her name, printed in bold at the top, the same girl who once laughed at my thrift store shoes. The same girl who told her friends I'd never be worth anything. And now, she was begging for a job. They say time changes everything. But I didn't just change, I rebuilt myself from the ashes of every insult she ever threw at me. And as fate would have it, I wasn't just her boss now. I was the billionaire she'd spend every day answering to, without even knowing the storm she helped create. This is how I became him. They say every man starts somewhere. I started in a one-room apartment with peeling wallpaper and dreams too big for the cracked ceiling above me. My earliest memory was the sound of my mother crying in the kitchen. Quiet sobs behind closed doors. I was 5. I asked her why she was sad. She smiled, wiped her eyes, and said, "Some flowers grow better after the rain." I didn't understand it then, but those words, they never left me. My mother, God bless her, she worked harder than anyone I've ever known. She cleaned offices at dawn and washed dishes till midnight. And still, there were nights we had to choose between paying the electric bill or eating dinner. I wore the same 3 shirts every week. The soles of my sneakers were held together with tape. But I never complained. I knew better. What I didn't know was how cruel the world could be. Not until middle school. That's when I met her. Emily. Golden hair, perfect teeth, laughter that could light up a room. At least, that's how I saw her. She was beautiful in the way rich girls often are. Like life had always gone their way, and they expected nothing less. Her father owned half the shopping centers in town. Mine couldn't even pay for my school lunch on time. I remember the first time we ever spoke. I was in line behind her at the cafeteria. My lunch card was empty again. The lady looked at me with pity, like she always did. I mumbled, "I'll just have water." Emily turned, raised an eyebrow, and smirked. "Water? That your diet or your budget?" Her friends laughed. I didn't. I just stood there, silent, swallowed the shame like a cold pill. From that day forward, she made sure I never forgot my place. "Trash boy, got a kid. Maybe you can code your way out of the slums." That last one stuck. More than it should, because I was coding, secretly, quietly, late at night, while other kids played video games or went to parties. I taught myself Python on an old cracked tablet from a thrift shop, not because I thought I'd be rich, but because I needed an escape. I needed to believe there was something beyond rent notices and quiet dinners, something more than just surviving. At 16, I built my first app, a budget planner. Nothing fancy, just code and grit. I tried to show it to my teacher. She nodded politely, said, "Good effort," but I saw the look in her eyes, like even trying was a waste of my time. One day, I showed it to Emily. I shouldn't have, but some stupid part of me wanted her to be impressed. "You built this?" she asked. I nodded, hope blooming like a fool. "That's cute," she said. "I didn't know you could do real things." Then she tossed her hair and walked off. That laugh, that same cruel, effortless laugh. I went home that night and stared at myself in the mirror. Skinny, broke, unwanted. And yet, there was a fire in my chest I couldn't explain. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I just wanted to matter. To be more than just the poor kid with the dreams. That year, I stopped trying to fit in. No more reaching out. No more hoping. I turned my pain into code. My humiliation into fuel. I started freelancing small gigs. Small pay. But it taught me something. If no one was going to give me a chance. Before we dive in, take a moment to drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories reach across the globe. And if this one already has you hooked, don't wait, hit that subscribe button now. I've got another powerful story dropping tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's get into it. I'd built my own damn door. By the time I graduated, I had saved just enough to skip college. I moved into a tiny studio and poured every second of my life into building one thing. A platform that could change how small businesses handled inventory. It was messy. It was hard. I failed more times than I can count. But something deep inside me, something that remembered that cafeteria line, that laugh, that smirk, that thing never let me stop. Years passed, and one day, the platform worked. Not just worked, it exploded. Suddenly, I wasn't Trash Boy anymore. I was a 24-year-old CEO with $2 million in seed funding. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a party. I didn't buy a car. I sat in my tiny kitchen, opened a bottle of off-brand whiskey, and whispered one name into the empty air. Emily, not out of hate, but because she reminded me of who I used to be, who I had to become. That was the first hour of my empire, and the last hour of the boy she once laughed at. Success didn't change me overnight. I was still that kid eating plain rice, counting coins to make rent. Only now, I had numbers in my bank account that felt unreal. A few tech blogs started writing about me, young founder to watch, hustle hero from nothing. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man on a ledge. The higher I climbed, the more I feared falling. That's when she came back into my life, not by fate, by foolishness. Mine. I was back in my hometown for a tech event. The hotel ballroom buzzed with startups and investors. And there she was, Emily, a little older, still dazzling, still dangerous. She walked up to me like we were old friends. "Look at you," she said. "The poor boy made it." She said it with a smile. But I heard the same laugh beneath her breath, the same condescension dressed in charm. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I asked her to dinner. Part of me wanted to rewrite the past, to show her I was more than a punchline, maybe even to forgive her. We sat across from each other at a rooftop restaurant I once cleaned tables for. She smiled, laughed, complimented me. She said she was proud, said she always knew I was smart. I started to believe her. I started to believe I'd been wrong about her. Then I went to the restroom. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes and one curious waiter who recognized me. When I came back, he leaned in and whispered, "She told the staff you were her charity project. Said she's only here to make sure you don't embarrass yourself." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I turned slowly, and there she was, laughing again with the bartender. The same laugh. Sharp, cold, cutting. I didn't finish my drink. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out into the night, alone, and something inside me snapped. That night, I made a promise. No more forgiveness. No more approval. I wasn't here to prove anything anymore. I was going to build something so massive that the world she lived in would answer to the world I created. That was the last time I ever let someone like Emily make me feel small. The boy was dead. The storm had begun. After that night on the rooftop, something changed in me. I didn't just want to succeed anymore. I wanted to dominate. Not for the money, not for the applause, but because I had looked into the eyes of someone who thought I was nothing, and I needed to become everything she feared. I rented a tiny warehouse space outside the city. No heat, no windows, just concrete, a desk, and a dream that wouldn't let me sleep. I stopped going out. I stopped answering calls. I stopped pretending I was normal. My team shrunk to just 2 other developers, both outcasts like me. We worked 16, sometimes 20 hours straight. Instant noodles, energy drinks, music blasting through cheap speakers. We weren't building an app anymore. We were building a revolution. By the 3rd month, my hands were shaking from exhaustion. By the 5th, my mother showed up and begged me to slow down. "You'll kill yourself before you ever live to enjoy it," she said. I looked at her, my sweet, broken-fingered mother who once scrubbed toilets so I could go to school, and I lied. "I'm okay." But I wasn't. I was disappearing. Into code, into meetings, into battles with venture capitalists who smiled with fangs. Every time one of them said, "You're too young," I heard Emily's voice. Every rejection, every doubt, it echoed her laughter, and I answered it with silence and more work. I lost friends. I missed funerals. I forgot birthdays. I broke up with a girl who truly loved me, because I couldn't love anything more than my need to prove the world wrong. But slowly, something incredible happened. The platform now called Ardent took off. We signed 1,000 small businesses in under 6 months, then 10,000. A major publication wrote a headline, "From Gutter to Gold. How one man changed the game." I should have been proud. I wasn't. I just worked harder, because for every success, I still felt the cracks beneath me. And one night, they finally broke. It was pitch black. 3:12 a.m. I was alone in the office, staring at a screen. I couldn't even read anymore. I stood up and collapsed. My body hit the floor like a dropped statue. I woke up in a hospital with an M4 in my arm and a nurse asking if I had anyone to call. I didn't. Just me and the echo of that rooftop laughter. That night, I realized something. I was winning, but I was not well. I had built an empire on pain, and now I was becoming its prisoner. So I made a new promise. I wouldn't stop building, but I would learn to build without bleeding. Not for her anymore, for me. I checked myself out of the hospital with more bruises than answers. But I wasn't broken. I was reborn. And the first thing I did was burn every excuse I'd been clinging to. I called my Tessio founders. I told them, This company doesn't survive unless we stop treating it like a hustle and start running it like a war. We moved into the basement of an abandoned furniture store. No windows, no sunlight. But this time, we brought fire. I brought in a strategy consultant, Nina. Ruthless, brilliant, cold-eyed. She looked at our numbers and said, "You're sitting on a volcano. But right now, it's just smoke." I asked her what it would take to make it erupt. She smiled. "You need a seed investor with a god complex." She introduced me to Julian Vance, Silicon Valley royalty, sharp suit, silver tongue. He built unicorns and burned bridges, and somehow made both look glamorous. He stared at me over the rim of his whiskey glass and said, "Why should I invest in a kid who looks like he hasn't slept since the Obama administration?" I said, "Because I'm too tired to lie to you, but I'll work harder than anyone you've ever met." He laughed, and he wrote the check. $2 million. Just like that. And suddenly, we weren't a garage startup anymore. We were a storm with funding. We hired talent. Real talent. I walked into boardrooms filled with men who still looked at me like a statistic. But now, I had leverage. Ardent grew faster than even I could process. By the end of the year, we were in 6 countries. $1 billion in total value. My inbox flooded with offers to sell. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Because something else had happened. The media got curious. Young billionaire from nothing. From homeless to CEO. Everyone wanted the story. But I didn't give it to them. Because I wasn't the hero yet. I was still watching from the shadows. Still waiting for the world to catch up. But I'll never forget the day the world did. We threw our first official Ardent gala black tie, champagne, skyline view. I wore a suit worth more than my mother's entire apartment. And that night, I saw her again. Emily, not as a guest, but working the event part of the catering staff. I blinked twice to be sure. Her name turned red. Event host Emily. She looked older now. Tired, but still beautiful. Still the same girl who laughed in my face. Our eyes met, and I knew in that moment she didn't recognize me. And I didn't say a word. I just watched. Watched as she poured champagne into the glasses of people who barely looked at her. Watched as she smiled through her exhaustion. Watched as the room applauded me and she stood in the corner, invisible. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like a ghost knocking on the back of my mind. That night, I didn't sleep, not from guilt, but from realization. I had all the money, all the power, all the revenge I ever thought I needed. But still, I was haunted by a girl who didn't even remember me. And that's when I made a new plan. I wouldn't just rise. I would bring her into my world, without her ever knowing who I was. I would give her a job, watch her work, and see if there was anything left in her that deserved forgiveness. The fire hadn't burned out. It had simply moved upstairs. Hiring her was easier than I expected. Her sum came through a third-party recruiter. No flashy titles, no high salary demands. Just desperation tucked behind careful words like transitioning. Open to growth, ready to contribute. But I knew the truth. She'd fallen harder than I ever imagined. I let HR handle the process. No direct interviews, no hints, just a new nameplate. Emily W., Executive Assistant, New Hire, Floor 38. 3 levels below my office. But I could see everything. Cameras, reports, observation logs. Not because I feared her, but because I needed to understand her. Who she was when no one was watching, and who I was, watching her. The first week, she was polite, a little nervous, but professional. She stayed late, asked questions, wrote everything down, like she was trying to prove something. I recognized that look. It was the same one I had once when I needed the world to believe in me. The irony wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, I stood behind the two-way glass above the conference floor. She was alone, eating lunch from a brown paper bag, just like I used to. And for a moment, I didn't see her as her. I saw another fallen dreamer, trying to claw her way back to dignity. And for that moment, I almost softened. But fate has a way of testing you the moment you pause. Because just when I thought I had control of the board, someone flipped the table. His name was Travis, my CFO, my oldest employee, my friend. Or so I thought. I found the discrepancies by accident. A few missed receipts, a shadow ledger, wire transfers routed through a shell company in the Caymans. Nearly $6 million gone. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. I confronted him in my office, just the two of us. He didn't deny it. He didn't flinch. He just sat back, smiled, and said, "You were too busy playing God with your past to notice your empire crumbling under your nose." And just like that, I understood. In trying to control one ghost, I had given another man the keys to the vault. I fired him that night. Quietly. Legally. We swept the news. Sealed the court filings. But the betrayal. It stuck to my bones. I stayed late that night. Everyone else gone. Lights off. Whiskey in hand. My empire was safe. But my peace was gone. And in that silence, there came a knock on the glass wall behind me. I turned. It was her. Emily. Holding a folder I hadn't asked for. She froze when she saw me. Sorry, didn't realize you were still here, she said, voice soft. I nodded. She placed the file on my desk and turned to leave, and just before the door closed behind her, I said, You ever been betrayed by someone who once called you family? She paused, didn't look back, just said, That's the only kind of betrayal that hurts, and then she was gone. I didn't move, didn't breathe, because in that moment, I didn't know who I was more afraid of. The traitors outside the gate, or the ghosts I had let in. Betrayal changes a man. Not just how he works, but how he sees the world. After Travis stole from me, I rewrote everything. The culture, the chain of command, the very air inside the company. Ardent would no longer be a family. It would be a machine. I hired new executives, men and women who didn't want to be friends, just winners. We tripled revenue in 6 months. I moved us into a high-rise that looked down on the very neighborhoods that once ignored me. I thought I'd feel something, but the higher I climbed, the quieter it got, except for her, Emily. She worked quietly, diligently, never late, never dramatic. She smiled when spoken to, asked thoughtful questions. She never recognized me, not even once. And that somehow bothered me more than if she had. I found myself watching her more than I should, not out of resentment anymore, but curiosity. What had life done to her? Why was she here, filing reports and delivering coffee, when once she was the girl who ruled every room she entered? I assigned her increasingly difficult tasks, managed to get her promoted to a special assistant role closer to my office, watched how she handled pressure. She never snapped, never complained, not even when her mother died and she used her only PTO day for the funeral. That night, I sat at my penthouse bar, turning her name over in my head like a stone I couldn't skip. Emily. The same name that once tasted like fire, now made me wonder if I had misunderstood everything. Had she always been cruel, or just young, privileged and blind? And what did that make me now, a man who kept her in his company like a secret test he didn't know how to grade? Nina noticed. First, you keep mentioning her, she said over a business dinner. Emily, the assistant. Why? I lied. She reminds me of someone. Nina leaned in. Be careful. Empires don't fall from wars. They fall from mercy. I didn't answer her, but I heard her, and still, I kept Emily close. One evening, I watched her helping an intern in the break room, someone she didn't need to help. The intern had dropped her laptop and burst into tears. Everyone else walked away. Emily sat down beside her and said quietly, Don't let one broken thing define you. And I felt something inside me twist. Because once upon a time, no one had said that to me, and now she was saying it to someone else. I didn't sleep the night, not because of rage, but because I didn't know if I was the villain anymore. The next morning, I called Our. I want her on my floor, reporting to me directly, Emily, they asked. Yes, any particular reason? I paused, then said the only truth I could offer. I need to know if I've been wrong. I had it all, every number in the bank, every building I used to walk past, now had my name on the lease. Awards, headlines, private jet keys. People I never knew wanted to shake my hand, and still, I couldn't sleep. I thought money would feel like armor, but at night, it felt like sandbags. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling of my penthouse, thinking about rice and cold floors and my mother's tired hands. She was sick now, liver failure, quiet, sudden. The doctors said they caught it too late. I offered everything: money, access, even private overseas clinics. She refused. I'm tired, baby, she said. Let me go with peace. You already gave me the world, but I didn't want peace. I wanted time. And for once, money couldn't buy it. I flew back and forth between cities, juggling meetings and chemo visits. Sat beside her hospital bed while she slept. Laptop open, emails firing. One evening, I arrived late. The nurse said she'd already had a visitor. Young woman, she said. Said she used to work with you. Blonde, kind eyes. I blinked. Emily, she nodded. She brought her flowers. Stayed an hour. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't tell Emily I knew. I just watched her more closely. She didn't mention it, didn't ask for anything, but something between us began to shift. She knocked once before entering meetings, brought me coffee when I didn't ask, sent flowers to my mother, again no card, just for strength. And then one night, I found an old photo in my mother's drawer. High school, a group shot. Emily, my mother, and me. They were laughing, not the cruel laugh, a real one. I remembered the day. It was a community fundraiser. My mother had organized it, and Emily helped bake cookies for the booth. She was kind that day. She helped me carry the trays. She even said my shirt looked nice. I had forgotten that. I had buried it beneath years of rage, and now, looking at that photo, I didn't know who I hated anymore. Her, or the version of me that needed her to be the villain. My mother passed 2 weeks later, quiet, gentle, like the sun slipping. Beneath a still lake, she held my hand, and with her last breath, whispered, "Let go." I cried for the first time in years, and when I returned to the office, Emily left a note on my desk. No sympathy, no pity, just 5 words, handwritten. She'd be proud of you. I held that note for hours, and realized my empire was towering, but I was still standing at the base of it, wondering why. It all felt so cold. I stared at her handwriting every night for a week. 5 words, no punctuation. She'd be proud of you, and for some reason, they broke me more than anything else ever had. I stopped watching her like a project, and started seeing her. She worked hard. She smiled less than she used to. She flinched when anyone raised their voice. She stayed late, not because she was told to, but because it was the only place that still gave her purpose. And sometimes, she paused at the office window, just staring out, like she was searching for a version of herself she had left behind. One Friday evening, we shared the elevator, just the 2 of us. She didn't say anything at first, just watched the floors tick down. Then, quietly, she asked, "Have we met before?" I kept my eyes forward. "No, I don't think so." She nodded slowly. "You just remind me of someone I used to know." I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Not fear, not hope, just wondering. I wanted to say everything. I wanted to scream. I was that boy. The one you laughed at. The one you forgot. The one who built this entire kingdom with your voice in his head. But I didn't. I just said, "People change." She smiled. "Sadly, some do." The elevator doors opened. She walked out, and I stayed behind, just staring at my own reflection in the metal. That weekend, I didn't go into the office. I went home, not to my penthouse, but back to the old neighborhood. The building I grew up in was gone, replaced with condos. I walked past the convenience store that used to kick me out for loitering, the bus stop where I waited every morning in the rain, the library where I learned to code cold hands over borrowed books. And suddenly, I wasn't a billionaire anymore. I was him again, the boy no one saw, the kid who dreamed in silence, who believed the only way to be loved was to become untouchable. On Monday morning, I arrived early. Emily was already there. She looked up from her desk, her eyes tired, but clear. "Rough weekend?" she asked. I nodded. "Just thinking about old things." "Me too," she said. "I had this dream I was back in high school." "You ever have those?" I didn't answer right away. Just walked to my office, stopped at the door, and said, "Sometimes the past doesn't visit in dreams. Sometimes it works 2 desks away from you." She looked confused, but she didn't ask, and I closed the door behind me. My heart was pounding, because for the first time, I wanted to be known, not just as the billionaire, not just as the boss, but as me, and that terrified me more than any deal ever had. The decision came slowly, like thought eyes sliding into motion. I didn't wake up and decide to tell her. I just stopped trying to hide it. I started leaving traces, little things, an old notebook I knew she'd see, a name mentioned in a meeting, Mr. Halstead, our 7th grade math teacher. She blinked, tilted her head, but said nothing. Then one afternoon, I played a song in the elevator, the same one that played on the radio the day she mocked me in the cafeteria. She looked up, eyes narrowing, a voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't heard this in forever." I looked straight ahead and said, "Some songs never leave you, especially when they play on your worst day." Her lips parted slightly. I saw something shift in her, but again, she said nothing. That night, she sent me an email. Subject, something familiar. The message said, "I keep thinking I know you. Not from now, from before." Did we go to school together? I didn't reply. I didn't have to, because the next morning, she came to my office early. Her eyes were puffy. She held a printed photo in her hand, from a yearbook. Her, me, 2008. She laid it on my desk and said only one word. "You." I nodded. She stepped back like she'd been struck. Why didn't you tell me? My voice was calm, colder than I meant it to be. Because I needed to see who you were. Without the guilt. She blinked. Her mouth opened, but she said nothing. I stood, walked around the desk. You don't remember the cafeteria, do you? Her brow furrowed. Cafeteria? You laughed at me. Every day. You made sure no one sat with me. Her face twisted. I don't remember that. I swear. And something inside me cracked. Because the moment I had been building toward the confrontation, the vengeance, the righteous fury, it just died. She didn't remember. All these years, I carried her words like chains. And to her, they were wind. I was a stupid kid, she said quietly. I said a lot of things I don't remember. I'm sorry. I nodded. But inside, something was shattering. Not because she hurt me, but because I had let that pain define me for so long. And she had barely even known it existed. Why now? She asked. Why bring me into your company? Why test me? Why watch me? I sat down. Because I needed to know if you changed. If I had. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, I can leave. I shook my head. No, I don't want you to leave. I just want to stop carrying this. She looked at me. Really looked. You were always more than what we saw, and I was too selfish to see it. She stood, walked to the door, then turned. I hope this job can become more than just a stage for your pain. And with that, she left. I stared at the door long after it closed, and I realized maybe the person I'd been punishing all these years wasn't her. It was me. After Emily left my office, I sat alone in the dark, my empire all around me, my name in every elevator, my legacy echoing across headlines. And yet, I felt like a man who had just woken up from a dream he mistook for life. I stopped watching her. I stopped testing her. I just let her be. And something strange began to happen. She flourished, not in power or title, but in presence. People respected her. She brought calm to chaos, solutions to dead ends. And slowly, I saw her not as the girl from my past, but as the woman she'd become. Weeks passed, then months. We worked together. We built together. And quietly, carefully, we began to heal. I never expected what happened next. One morning, Emily came to my office, eyes wide, hands trembling. She dropped a thick folder on my desk. I found something. You need to see it. It was an old chain of emails between her father and the school board, dated back to our high school years. It was a campaign, a deliberate effort to destroy me. Her father had orchestrated everything. The rumors, the taunts. He paid off teachers to discourage me, even blocked a scholarship I applied for one eye. Had no idea I'd even qualified for. He thought you were a threat, Emily said, her voice shaking. You were this brilliant poor kid, and he didn't want his daughter anywhere near you. My chest tightened. He told me not to talk to you, said you'd never be anything. I believed him. God, I was so stupid. I sat back in my chair, and the truth hit me like a slow, collapsing building. All these years, I thought it was her. Her laughter, her words, her indifference. But it wasn't. It was a narrative planted by a man who feared the future I might build. And the saddest part, I believed it. I had let his voice shape me, let his shadow fuel my rise. And in doing so, I had become just like him, cold, guarded, and obsessed with control. Emily was crying now. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry for what I did, and for what I didn't see. I wish I could go back. I stood, crossed the room, and for the first time in my life, I hugged her. We can't go back, I said. But maybe we can move forward. 2 years later, Ardent became a publicly traded company. Our valuation crossed 10 billion. I gave half of my shares to a foundation for underprivileged kids who code. And Emily, she became our chief people officer. The headlines didn't understand it, but we didn't care. We rebuilt everything not on revenge, but on the ashes of it. People ask me now, what was your secret? What fueled you? And I smile, because they're waiting for some startup catchphrase or a Forbes slick mantra. But here's the truth. I was built by silence, forged in cruelty, tempered by failure, but saved by the one person I thought I hated most. She laughed when I was poor. Now I'm a billionaire, and she didn't just work for me. She helped me become something worth working for.